Hey guys, it's Kendra.
And this is Jessica. And you're listening to
Lucid Lab.
It's been a beautiful week here in Denver, Colorado.
I know it's making me crave summertime because we had the time shift and now it's staying light until 7 o'clock.
Thank God.
I know. And it's been warm.
Yeah.
I've felt the call to be outside more this week.
I keep looking at the forecast and it's still the same.
Yeah. I mean, today was a little cold, but it's getting better again. I think tomorrow.
It dipped weirdly this morning. It was cold and windy, and
then the sun came out and it looks fine out now. It's still windy though, but it is March. I think March. Do you remember that whole saying when we were little is in like a lion, out like a lamb?
No, but
they always say that about March. It's in like a lion, out like a lamb, or it's opposite, in like a lamb, out like a lion.
Yeah.
March is just known for the wind, and we saw some of that today.
And we still have 2 blizzard months left in Colorado.
I'm trying not to think about that.
I know.
I don't want to shovel any more snow.
No, I'm done with snow too.
I know it's a possibility.
It didn't feel like we had too much this
No, it wasn't
winter.
too bad. No.
Yeah.
It was the appropriate amount. We want enough snow that we don't have wildfires in the summertime.
Right.
But also that I don't have to shovel a lot.
Well, this week has been a bit of a blur for me, I think. I was just really tired this week.
Yes.
Never got enough sleep, but I'm just have a million things going on all at once.
That's, our lives, I feel like.
Including getting outfits for my daughter for silly little things. There's another talent show at her school, and she wasn't supposed to be in it because she won the last one.
Oh.
But I guess not enough people applied. And so the teacher wrote me, and she's like, can she be in it again? And I was like, oh gosh, I was kind of hoping to skip one thing.
It feels like y'all have 4 talent shows. You must have one every quarter. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And she's going to do Annie. So I just got her this wig and the whole shebang. And
she's going to look so cute.
She will look cute. But I told her, I'm like, you're not allowed to win, so don't even try.
So you're sound tone deaf.
Yeah.
Make sure you sing off key.
Yeah, that'll be cute. And then she also has a school dance coming up. And it's 90s themed. And I'm stuck choosing between the windbreaker shit and Fiona Apple. You know?
I was just thinking grunge is what I thought of.
Because I can pull that off probably without buying anything for her. And I'm like, I think I'm going to do that.
And do the little choker necklaces.
Yeah. And her hair and weird messy braid things that stick up. And
with the little butterfly clips. And you can do the glittery makeup.
Or those little when you tie and twist them and pin them into your hair.
There's so much. The 90s was fun. I kind of miss it.
I do too.
Well, I've just been working all week, but I did go to the hair salon today and I was not planning this, but I went in and I was just getting touch up for my color and I was going to do a trim and my hair was down to my chest level, pretty long. And I just had a wild hair, I guess, and decided to chop it all off.
It looks great.
And I love it. And I feel light. And I was talking with my hair girl. I've been going to her for 15 years. And she also just chopped her hair off. And we were saying hair holds energy. And I took 7 inches off and it's I feel freer. I don't know. I let go of those years. 7 inches is years of growth.
That's true.
So it's new hair, new me. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know if I'm feeling lighter and better in another month.
I think I complained about the haircut that I had got before.
Yeah.
But I like it now.
It looks good on you.
Yeah.
It was a shock at first because you weren't planning it.
Exactly.
You went in just wanting a trim.
Right.
When you're in the mindset of yes, I want to chop my hair, it's different than when they cut it for you and you're
right.
This is not what I was planning.
Yeah, it turned out okay.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to get a little bit more serious and talk about a critical issue that has been plaguing our Indigenous communities here in America and in Canada for far too long. The crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Oh my God.
The movement is called MMIW. So if you see that hashtag somewhere, that's what it stands for.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll see MMIWG to include girls at the end. I'm also going to talk about residential schools. If you don't know what those are, we're going to come back to that. Don't worry. There is a lot to go over, but both are devastating realities that affect thousands of families across North America.
Okay.
The importance of discussing the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this country and Canada cannot be overstated. I want to shine light on 2 cases, and in doing so, we hope to raise awareness in whatever way we can.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this.
The 2 cases I wanted to talk about were going to be my mini episode last week, but when looking into them and other issues, I knew that wasn't going to be enough.
No, we need to give it its own due.
Its own episode.
Yes.
Even though I have personally been scared to tackle this issue, I knew it was time.
Yeah. We have talked about other countries and the fucked up things going on there, so we need to look at what's going on in our country. We talked about the lynchings last week on my mini episode, and I think, yes, I agree, it's time.
It's been on my list forever, but certain topics do scare us. We want to do them justice and get the right points across, and sometimes with our limited schedule, that feels very overwhelming and impossible.
Yes.
Because it is so important. But I'm here today, and I hope the information in this episode makes you think and helps you hold an even larger space in your heart for our own Indigenous people. And honestly, no matter where you live, because the same issues are worldwide.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the reality we live in.
It has been and will be an ongoing effort to demand justice, change laws, and push awareness. But being that we are from here and do not hear enough about it is proof that mainstream media does not put this in the forefront. And I wholeheartedly understand the anger and frustration of these communities.
Yes.
It is a serious issue and almost no one talks about it.
We never hear about this.
Never. And before people say that things can only change when people push and advocate for those changes, they do.
Yes.
They have been fighting their entire lives every day. They do protest. They do fight for laws, for their rights to be heard, to save their people.
No one's listening or making changes.
It just never makes primetime news.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a race issue.
Which is unfortunately part of our country.
We can't ignore the fact that a white girl going missing or being found to be murdered is far more likely to cause national, even international outrage compared to an Indigenous woman or girl.
Yes.
Not to mention the unlimited funds that are expended to help solve cases for white girls. But when it comes to a Native woman, they are expected to be okay with the explanation that those funds are not available.
Oh, it's infuriating.
We can hold love and space for everyone taken or murdered, but we need to raise them all up and demand justice for all, not just for a select few.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with some sobering statistics to underscore the gravity of this crisis. Murder is the 3rd leading cause of death for Indigenous women.
Okay.
Homicide is the number 1 cause of death for Indigenous girls under the age of 18.
Ouch.
Like, let that sink in.
That's unacceptable.
Absolutely. And suicide is up there too with it.
Oh my.
In fact, Native communities experience higher rates of suicide compared to all other racial and ethnic groups in the U.S.
Wow.
Native women and girls face murder rates exceeding 10 times the national average.
Wow.
10 times the national average, but they represent only 2% of our demographic.
So they are clearly being targeted.
And that 2% is not just the women and girls. That includes men and boys too.
Yes, the 2% of the population.
So women are a much smaller percentage of that.
And yet such a high statistic of what's happening.
In Canada, Indigenous women are 4 times more likely than non-Indigenous women to be victims of violence. Indigenous women make up 16% of all female homicide victims and 11% of missing women. Yet Indigenous people make up only 4.3% of the population in Canada.
Okay.
So even though it's less there,
it's still not right.
Higher than everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
When found deceased, Native American women's bodies are 135% more likely to be unidentified than those of women from other racial or ethnic groups.
Like they just don't even try?
I think so.
Wow.
There's some other reasons. I'm going to come to why there's such a struggle here in a second. As of 2016, the National Crime Information Center reported 5,712 cases of missing American Indian or Alaska Native women and girls in America.
Okay.
Although our government will have you think otherwise with the U.S. Department of Justice Federal Missing Persons Database, NamUs, they only log 116 cases that year.
Whoa, what the fuck? Like, that's a huge discrepancy.
These numbers are not just figures. They represent mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends whose lives have been cut short or forever altered.
Yeah.
Most of what I know that has happened in recent times comes from TikTok. Without TikTok, I wouldn't know about the women and girls I'm about to talk about.
Yeah.
Families and allies are fighting for justice, yet you will not hear about it outside of local news. If you do.
So messed up.
But if you are on TikTok and you come upon a Native person bringing awareness to an issue, there are a few things I wanted to help explain in case you do not already know. You might come upon a photo or video of someone with a red handprint covering their mouth. The red hand symbolizes the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world. Red is important for the Indigenous people, which is hard for a lot of Americans right now because when we see red, we think MAGA.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But I'm going to stop. And from now on, I am going to think of all of those who have been taken.
Yeah. Let's give a different connotation to red.
Yes. It is believed that the dead can see red. So by wearing red, Native people are invoking the help of their ancestors and spiritual guides. The red hand over the mouth has become a symbol of the MMIW movement. It stands for all the missing sisters whose voices are not heard.
Okay.
It stands for the silence of the media and law enforcement and for the oppression and subjugation of Native women who are now rising up to say, no more stolen sisters.
I love it.
That's another hashtag you'll see everywhere.
Okay.
So if you want to go research this, that's why I'm saying that, because you will find more that way as well. Racism is a big reason, if not the main reason, why we do not hear more about the issue, but there are other reasons, such as the Indian Relocation Act and federal policies that compound the issue. Many natives do not live on the tribal lands or reservations. Many have a transient lifestyle between tribal and state lands. This results in reporting issues, jurisdictional complications, and communication and coordination problems between agencies. Like with our Black community, or just those in poverty, Native Americans are vulnerable to the system.
Yeah.
People coming out of the foster care system, people lacking resources or family, people isolated emotionally, physically, or psychologically are more susceptible to being victims of this silence and discrimination. Poverty and homelessness is a huge systemic and socioeconomic issue for Native people. And you know how this country likes to treat its poor and homeless.
Less than human.
And on top of that, they are people of color.
Yeah.
You can see where this is going. And even though I am going to focus on women and girls for a big portion of this episode, it is all Native people. While women and girls are the primary victims of violence and human trafficking among Native people, people of all ages are victims of these horrific crimes, including men, boys, infants, and the elderly. 82% of Indigenous men are victims of violence in their lifetime, and Native children are more likely to experience trauma and abuse than their non-Native peers.
So sad.
Urban Natives living outside of a reservation face many stereotypes. This also leads to the underreporting of crimes. It is horrible, but many think Native people are nothing but drug addicts, alcoholics, and gamblers who live off of government assistance.
Yes, that is the pushed stereotype. And it's sad because it's not true.
It's not. First, let's make something very clear. Their land was stolen.
Absolutely.
Before we came over here, women were revered and honored. They were sacred leaders. We came over with our patriarchal bullshit and called them savages.
Yeah, fuck us.
From the beginning of this American history, Native women became victims of rape, violence, and submission. I will never understand the correlation for a man to view a woman as less than or dirty, and therefore they are rapeable.
It's unimaginable.
Like, if you really thought she was dirty, why the fuck are you touching her?
Because it's just a control thing. They want to convince those women that they are so that they feel like it's okay and that they deserve it.
But just fuck off.
It's so messed up.
Every moment I take a step back in history, I find nothing to be proud of.
Agreed.
With this country other than the people that take a stand and demand justice and equality. Land of the free is the biggest joke of all time.
So many people are not free here.
But it is because of this history and long-lasting stereotypes that when a Native woman or girl goes missing or ends up dead, law enforcement often turns a blind eye. They don't take it seriously. And if mainstream media does pick up the story, it doesn't take long before the victim or their family is blamed for the outcome.
Of course they are. I feel like I'm going to get really angry in this episode.
You will.
I'm already. It's just so blatantly clear, like, why this is happening and, like, the injustice behind it, and that America already, we know, doesn't like women. And then you add in any kind of women that aren't white, and it's an even lower level of what they think of us. It's just so demoralizing. I don't know what the word is right now. It makes me angry for these women. It makes me angry for myself. And I'm like the most privileged of the women. I'm a white woman, and I know that we are second-class citizens to any man in this country. And then to be a woman of color, it's just horrible.
There also is a strength in them that you and I don't have.
True. And a sisterhood that white women don't have.
That's very true.
I'm envious of that when I see it on social media, mostly among the Black community that I see a lot on there. And I'm sure it's strong among the Native American women as well.
White women don't have community.
No, because so many are beholden to their men.
Exactly.
Because we're the front line of the patriarchy.
The only women who have community are those who are super religious or super racist.
Conservative women.
Right. Yeah, there we go. Well, I was watching a short film illustrating this discrimination. It's called Voices Unheard. It's about two friends from New York, Native American. They travel to another state for some work gig. And when they get to their Airbnb, one is tired and the other one is hungry.
Okay.
So the hungry friend leaves to go bring some food back while the other one naps.
Okay.
She never comes back.
Oh, no.
Her friend calls the police and they refuse to do anything other than put out an APB on her car. They made a comment about her probably being out drinking or with friends on a reservation. But her friend makes it clear. First of all, they don't drink and they're not from this area.
She went out to get food, like that a racial stereotype already.
Yep. But still the cops will not consider her missing for 72 hours. They claim because she's an adult. But this made me think of our last episode with Sierra Joggin.
Yes.
They received help searching for her almost instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how it should be
for
because
everyone.
of who they were.
Yeah.
They did not receive the same help. Her friend was never found. It was a quick video, but an emotional watch.
Wow.
How defeated and desperate anyone feels to lose a loved one, especially not knowing what happened to them.
Yeah.
It's just too much. And this was just an illustration, but it's a perfect example of what these Indigenous families are dealing with on a regular basis.
So sad and unnecessary.
I also watched a documentary called The Highway of Tears. It's about countless women who have disappeared along Highway 16 in British Columbia for decades.
Okay.
As of 2 years ago, over 40 women have been reported missing or murdered along the Highway 16 corridor, which is known as the Highway of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
It is thought to be the work of multiple serial killers with racial or sexual motivations. There were some victims that were not Aboriginal, but the majority were.
Okay.
It's a vast wilderness area, which is obviously the perfect hiding ground for someone or multiple people who want to make someone disappear.
Yes.
The crisis of what was happening on Highway 16 didn't make waves until 2002 when a young white woman, Nicole Hoare, went missing along the highway.
And then it became a new sensation.
For decades before, leading up to that, Aboriginal women and girls went missing or were found murdered along that highway without so much as a whisper of those crimes.
Wow.
Imagine how frustrating that was for that community to see the focus on Nicole after decades of their family and friends going missing and dying and nothing was done.
Wow.
Nicole's parents, though, were very understanding of the Indigenous community's anger and stood with them to fight for justice, which was
that's
cool to
good.
see.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one story out of Canada. So I'm trying to mix Canada and US here because it's very similar between these two countries because guess what? It was one land. Okay?
Right.
Now, like with some of the issues I just mentioned, residential schools are a part of the issue. In Canada, it is a huge part of the issue. And I think because it's talked about more there, I don't think enough people are being heard here in America to have their stories told.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you a quick explanation in case you've never heard of residential schools, and then I'm going to go more into it.
Yeah, I don't know what those are.
I personally had never heard about them until the last couple of years, which is crazy to me. Residential schools were government-sponsored, church-run institutions established in Canada and the United States that forcibly assimilated Indigenous children into Euro-American culture.
Oh,
These schools operated for over 160 years in Canada and for about 150 years in the U.S.
I've never heard of these. How?
And it didn't end that long ago. Indigenous children were taken from their families and communities against their will.
Oh, no.
They were prohibited from speaking their native languages or practicing their cultural traditions. And this was their quote. It was their way of getting rid of the Indian problem.
That's disgusting.
Many children suffered physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at these schools, which were mostly run by the Catholic Church and some other Christian denominations.
Not surprising.
The children lived in very poor conditions. There was overcrowding, inadequate health care, and malnutrition. And it led to a lot of these children dying. It is yet another dark chapter in our North American history that is only very recently began gaining awareness with a grim discovery in Canada in 2021.
I do remember that. This is crazy. Of course, this was not taught to us.
No.
Nothing that would shine a less than perfect light on America was taught to us.
Yep. That's why you and I have changed drastically.
Yes, that's why the more education you get, the more liberal, I put that in quotations because I hate that.
That's just what
word.
Everyone else calls us.
The more
woke
human you become.
Exactly.
The more empathetic, the more aware, just so much with the education.
And empathy, not sympathy.
Empathy,
yes. Okay, so first a history lesson, because how did this start? And we're going to start with America. And this is not a lesson for Native people or anyone who knows this.
Yeah.
Because they are well aware of the atrocities that their family went through for generations.
Right.
Efforts to eradicate Indigenous culture in the U.S. began early, with denominations of Catholicism and Protestantism creating missions focused on Indigenous education starting in the 1600s, with the goal of converting them to the Christian faith and to colonist society.
I hate this.
We've talked about some of this, other episodes.
And I hate it.
In the 1800s, it took on a new life with the backing of the federal government.
Ugh.
The first federal Indian boarding school was established in 1801, and in March of 1819, the Indian Civilization Act Fund was enacted that supported many Christian denominations to continue their efforts of Indigenous cultural genocide in the United States. They received $10,000 plus a year to do this.
Ugh.
In 1879, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School was established in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It was the first federal off-reservation residential boarding school. It stripped its students of their Indigenous culture by implementing very strict rules. The Indigenous children had to take on a colonist name, colonist clothing, the English language, the religion, and cut their hair. Maintaining ties to their culture was strictly prohibited, and if they broke any rules, they would face corporal punishment. They also made older students physically punish younger students.
So messed up.
They created what they called the outing program, where students were not allowed to go home to their families. They couldn't risk their family's influence on them, so they were placed with white families during the summer.
Oh my God, I'm so mad right now just listening to this.
During the school year, they served as maids and farm laborers. They were overworked and ill-fed, but also abused mentally, physically, and sexually during their enrollment at the Carlisle. And in many cases, students died, never getting to see their families again.
Oh my God, how heartbreaking.
The system left children who did survive without community.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't accepted by colonist society, and their culture had been stripped from them. But this place influenced similar systems in Canada and Latin America.
I can't imagine being the mothers of those children and having to let them go.
Yep.
And they probably had no idea exactly how horrible the conditions were.
No, many didn't. And we'll talk about it later. This went on for generations. So different generations had their own understanding of everything. It sucks. They just fucked everyone over.
Yes. In the name of assimilation and trying to create this white society. I don't know what else to call it. Just pushing everyone to fit this perfect little mold. And it's what they're still trying to do today.
But in reality, these programs became something far worse. And I'm going to get there.
Yeah, they became a playground for predators.
Exactly.
I'm sure. Mm-hmm. They knew they could get away with it.
Exactly. In the late 1890s, the government started withholding rations to Indigenous nations and families who refused to send their children to boarding schools.
Wow.
They were also threatened with jail. Our government then kidnapped and removed children from their reservations and sent them to off-reservation schools without parental consent.
Oh my God.
And these schools just got worse. An official document was released in 1898 called Rules for Indian Schools Service. All schools could only speak English, and the book listed 262 roles on how they should operate in order to successfully assimilate Indigenous children.
They're treating them like they're robots or something, not human beings.
One of the hardest things that I came upon in watching everything that I did is the expectation of a 5-year-old to all of a sudden, just because you put her in that room, understand English, and then be punished for not understanding what the fuck you're saying.
Wow.
It wasn't a pleasant way to learn a language.
No, they were teaching through fear instead of like acceptance and love, which is how children learn best.
Right. The Carlisle Indian School did end up closing in 1918, but its harsh philosophy continued to grow, and other schools did continue to pop up all over the country. But by the late 1920s, the federal government kind of said, well, we don't care anymore. We're going to stop funding so you don't get food and clothes.
What?
Indigenous children started attending public school instead, and by 1932, there were 48,000 Indigenous children in public schools.
Okay.
But it would still take another 30 years for the boarding schools to start shutting down because of the inhumane treatment of the children.
Mm-hmm.
People started to find out more about these schools and fought against them. In 1969, the Federal Education Program, which is a really nice way of saying instruction for cultural genocide, abuse, and killing of children, was reformed over time and is now the Bureau of Indian Education, or BIE today.
Okay.
Only as of June of 2021 has there been any concerted effort to identify all U.S. boarding school sites, the names and the tribal identities of students, burial sites of Indigenous children, collect the experience and stories of the Indigenous people who went to these schools, and to investigate and address the harm that happened in these schools. Today, it's called the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative.
Okay.
But again, this was only formed because of that discovery in Canada.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have cared. I still have like a little issue with them calling them Indians. Like, is
Me
that
too.
not
I don't even feel right saying Native American.
right? They are the Americans.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's what Native says, but they
They're
were
different
forced to be
tribes.
American.
Yes, they were whatever tribe they came from.
Exactly.
Like, that's their identity, and we've stripped that from them. But to call them Indians is just
I know.
a slap in the face.
But this discovery, even though it didn't happen in the U.S., it forced the hands of people here to acknowledge the history and the trauma. And that's why I've only heard about this in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
As it currently stands, with what they do know, the Department of Interior has identified 53 burial sites, which includes at least 973 Indigenous students who died while in these schools.
Wow.
The number is expected to grow into the thousands with further investigation of the currently recognized 408 U.S. boarding schools we had over time.
Wow.
Because this is only from a few schools.
That they found that many?
Yes.
Damn.
And it wasn't until October of last year in 2024 that Joe Biden issued a formal apology to Native Americans for the U.S. government's role in the Indian boarding school system. It was the first time in American history that a sitting president publicly acknowledged the history, the trauma, and loss. 2024.
Took how long? Like, that's ridiculous. I can see why they're angry. I'm angry for them.
And just a few months later, our current president publicly questions the citizenship status of Native Americans in the context of birthright citizenship.
I cannot.
Outrageous.
With this guy. He needs Russian citizenship. That's what he really wants.
The good thing is, thankfully, the rest of the world is well aware of who has the right to be here.
Yes.
Compared to other people. All right, so that's the U.S. Let's talk about Canada now. Like the United States, residential schools began in the 1600s. Initially, these schools, which forcibly removed children from their homes, were administered by the various Protestant denominations and Catholic churches through their missionaries.
Please remind me, like, I thought the Christian religion was supposed to be one of loving and acceptance. And all of that. Doesn't sound like it too much.
Never has been, no.
It's one of indoctrination and compliance.
And control.
Through violence. Mm-hmm. It's all it is.
Federal involvement in Canada started in the 1840s. A certain douchebag, Herman Merivale, who was previously a professor at Oxford, got the position of Undersecretary of State for Canada Colonies, and made it his mission to, quote, civilize the Indian and push for assimilation through education.
Oh, I hate that word, civilize.
You know,
like, who are you to be the authority on like what a human should look like in the world?
That
don't. Just pisses me off. I'm just sorry.
Me too. I just don't understand how
right
a white man like popped out a lady's hoo-ha and was like, I'm it.
Right. I'm the perfect specimen and everyone should be just like me.
What the fuck?
Like, we grow through diversity. Life is better with diversity. We don't want to all look like your like pasty Oxford ass. I don't know. Like, I just see like Poindexter dude. Like, you're not fun and exciting in any way. And no girl probably wants to
That's
sleep
why
with
they
you.
get so mad. That's why they're so mad. Well, residential schools were officially proposed in 1842, and that is when the first one opened, which included forced separation of the child from their family.
Oh my God.
Their reasoning for the sake and future of children. In 1846, the Indian Affairs Superintendent at the General Council of Indian Chiefs and Principalmen said, "It is because you do not feel or know the value of education. You would not give up your idle, roving habits to enable your children to receive instruction. Therefore, you remain poor, ignorant, and miserable. It is found you cannot even govern yourselves, and if left to be guided by your own judgment, you will never be better off than you are at the present, and your children will ever remain in ignorance. It has therefore been determined that your children shall be sent to schools where they will forget their Indian habits and will be instructed in all the necessary acts of civilized life and become one with your white brethren."
Fuck that guy. They were doing just fucking fine before we showed up on a fucking boat. And they had their like structure and their civilizations and they were doing just fine.
Yep.
They were living off the land and treating it with reverence and all of the things that we've never done.
I mean, yes, some of the communities had their own issues. There were bad groups. There were evil groups, just like there are today, but it was still their land.
Yes.
And for us to come here and say, nope, ours now, and now you must be exactly like us or you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what white man popped out a lady's hoo-ha and was like, I'm it. Everything needs to be exactly like me.
And they're trying to do it right now. The Christian fundamentalists are like, everyone must fit into this little Bible mold.
I know.
And can't be anything different. Like, why is this a struggle of humanity?
And this is so hard right now, like in my mind, because I haven't been pressured in this way. And I grew up, in the Mormon church or whatever.
Right.
But I never felt like it shoved down my throat. And so I've also never felt like Christianity shoved in my face too much until now.
It's ridiculous.
Why is it so heavy? And why did it just all of a sudden in a couple of years just become what it is right now?
You look at Oklahoma and what's going on there. It's the scariest part. Like, they've brought corporal punishment back into the schools because of a Bible verse that says, spare the rod, spoil the child. They're spanking children again.
And I saw something about that, and they were specifically having a discussion about harming and punishing children with disabilities.
Yes, even more so. And they want them like out of the schools in a way. They want them to just not exist.
I know.
If you don't fit into this perfect little form, it's so frustrating. I don't even know where I'm going right now.
It's all disgusting.
I'm just so angry. Like we said in the last couple of episodes, I have nowhere else to put this anger.
I know.
So you're welcome. Here it is. You get to listen to it.
Let me anger you some more. So in 1857, Canada tried convincing Indigenous men, and I find this funny, they tried convincing Indigenous men to voluntarily give up their native culture and language. At the time, there were two legal status categories, Indian or citizen.
Okay.
I think that might be it now, just with the recognition of the different groups. I don't know.
Like if they live on reservations, they're not allowed to vote unless they're a citizen?
I mean, in 1857, I don't know what all the rules were, but that's how you were categorized. You were either Indian or you were citizen of Canada.
Oh, this is Canada. Sorry.
Yeah, Canada. But it's funny because there's so many similarities, and that's why we've been best friends for so many years.
Until like the last few months.
Like, what the fuck?
I'm like, why are we picking a fight with Canada? I don't get it, but whatever.
But Canada, like
they've got their issues, apparently.
I'm hating on them in this episode too. But they've done more to acknowledge everything than we have.
True.
I'll give them that. But Indian or citizen each had their different rights, resources, and benefits, and they tried dangling this white carrot in Indigenous men's faces saying, hey, you, come be with your white brethren.
Mm-hmm.
Experience the good life. Canada enacted what was called the Gradual Civilization Act.
Oh,
and you had to meet for criteria, be a man over 21, be able to speak, read, and write either English or French, be of good moral character, and be free from debt.
Okay.
And voila, your life is going to be better. This act was completely unsuccessful.
Good.
They were like, well, let's try not to force them. Let's just see if they want it.
And they're like, fuck no, I don't want that.
There was only one man who voluntarily enfranchised
his whole culture.
Yeah. And it's probably because his family hated him. Who knows what reason he did that?
Who knows? Somebody bribed him money.
I mean, there's a lot of hardship in Indigenous families. I won't put it past one person to be like, yeah, fuck my family.
Right. Or it feels like it's going to be an opportunity.
Right. Well, because of this, it didn't work, so they had to push harder.
Of course, time to force it.
In 1885, traditional Indian ceremonies, and a lot of my Indians are in quotation, just so you know.
Yes.
These ceremonies were declared illegal in Canada.
Oh my God.
In 1892, the Canadian government and Christian churches entered a formal agreement for religious organizations to operate the schools, where the children were referred to as inmates.
What?
This lasted for another 100 plus years. And when Canada was starting to be seen in a bad light for what they were doing, they forced parents to sign custody of their children over to the school's superintendent or principal.
Oh my God.
Which was typically the priest.
That is unacceptable.
They had to keep things on the up and up. We own these children now, so we could do whatever we want with them. Priests, Indian agents, and police officers kidnapped children from their homes and communities, and the children were always taken far, far away so that they couldn't run back home.
Oh my goodness. I'm like ashamed to be a white person right now.
I know.
This is so fucked up. I know none of this. I'm like learning right now and getting so pissed.
In 1928 and 1933, 2 different acts were enacted in the provinces of Alberta and British Columbia that legalized the sterilization of children in residential schools.
What?
Because the principals were the legal guardians of the children. After forcing their parents to sign away their rights, they got away with this. And it frequently occurred in whole groups of Indigenous children as they hit puberty.
Oh my God.
Now, I have a theory of why that happened, and I'm going to come to it in a minute, but I think it's because some priests
were getting a little handsy with the kids.
And they had to make sure certain kids didn't wind up pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Scrutiny of these schools was there, though. Not enough.
Obviously.
There was never enough pressure to stop them, but in 1945, it became legal for Indigenous children to attend public schools. And in 1948, the mandatory attendance of residential schools was officially ended, even though the schools, again, would remain open for decades. And it is confusing because even though it would seem then that it would be illegal to force children to go to these schools, from the mid-1950s through 1980,
oh damn,
government officials and social workers continued to kidnap children on the basis of cultural inferiority or the families not being able to adequately care for their children.
Oh my goodness.
The children would then be in the foster system or adopted out to non-Indigenous families, some even out of the country. We've talked about this with like stuff with the Hart family. This shit still goes on.
It's so infuriating.
This point in Canadian history has a name. It's called the 60s scoop.
Okay.
Between 11,000 and 20,000 children were taken during this time and adopted out.
20,000? Fuck.
And only recently has the Canadian government attempted to compensate the survivors from this time.
Okay.
And it is wild, but it would not be until 1996 in Canada that the last federal Indian residential school closed its doors.
Wow.
1996.
That's not that long ago.
No.
That's like when I was in high school. That's crazy. Like not that long ago. These poor children, these poor families.
And it would take another 25 years before the horror of these atrocities were brought to light in a public way.
Yeah.
In May of 2021, 215 bodies of children were found buried on Kamloops Indian Residential School grounds in Kamloops, British Columbia. This sparked outrage.
Yes.
It was this discovery that prompted the U.S. to investigate the schools here, where they immediately found 9 graves at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School that I mentioned before. As of today, 1,308 unmarked graves have been discovered in Canada through the use of ground-penetrating radar. And this number, again, is just from a few of the schools.
Oh, my God.
Estimates are high for the total, as there are 140 former Canadian residential schools and sites to search. Overall, it is estimated that in Canada, over 150,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children were forcibly removed from their families and made to attend these schools. The number is believed to be much higher than that. And similarly, in America, it is estimated to be hundreds of thousands. These poor children were just ripped away from their families.
To be abused and killed in the name of education and civilization. Like, this just is horrible. These kids were victimized. Oh my God.
I'm going to go into more.
I haven't
actually told you some stuff, but, and it's not like here in America, we're doing anything with any of this yet. And if anything, our current sitting president is taking away recognition by not acknowledging Black History Month.
They don't want to talk about slavery.
Pray for us here, but at the same time, I can look at Canada and at least see that they're attempting. In Canada, they recognize all these children now. Okay. It started in 2021, but they have a day known as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's on September 30th. It's also what they call Orange Shirt Day.
Okay.
It's something that started, I believe, in like 2013, so much earlier. So there was a push for this, but it became a federally statutory holiday in 2021.
Okay.
So orange and red, remember that.
September 30th.
And before I move forward from residential schools and back to women and girls in particular, I do want to take a moment to highlight what it was like for these children.
Oh.
Hundreds of thousands of children who were forced to attend, and the uncountable, because we don't know, number of them that ended up dead. Because I watched a few documentaries.
Oh my God.
More information is starting to come out now that our countries are willing or are being forced to acknowledge this horrific history. Because there are still many people alive today who attended and survived these schools who are talking about their experiences. You can find a lot of these people on TikTok, actually.
Yeah.
They are actively talking about what they went through. But again, don't get it twisted. This is not recent. All of these people and groups have been fighting for justice ever since
it happened.
They left. School closed. Their families went through this for decades.
Yeah. They just haven't been heard. They've been silenced.
Yes. I implore you to go watch any documentary that you can on this. Just because of the scope of this, 408 schools in America alone.
Yeah.
Think of that. All the different locations, different children from different tribes with different languages and cultures, different landscapes, different experiences. It is literally impossible for one person like me sitting here to cover all of the experiences that they have, because it's going to be different and it's all their own. But there are some similarities among these schools, and that's kind of what I want to talk about.
Okay.
I watched one that released last year. You can still watch it. It's on Hulu.
Okay.
It's called Sugarcane.
Okay.
You hear stories from survivors of one mission, St. Joseph's Mission near Williams Lake in British Columbia. Just one of hundreds of schools that wreaked havoc and destroyed many lives. One woman, Charlene, went to this school and made it her mission to hold people accountable and has been fighting in every way she can for decades. She has an active investigation into literally every bit of this mission with the help of others. One girl is named Whitney, and from what I can tell, she seems just as devoted to this investigation, along with Chief Willie Sellers. This documentary was the idea of Julian Brave Noisecat. His father, Ed Archie Noisecat, went to St. Joseph's. He was left in a dumpster as a baby.
Aww.
Julian, after hearing stories, wanted and needed to learn more about his father's experience because it heavily affected his life growing up.
Yes, I can imagine.
Even though he didn't go to the school. His father spent his life after leaving trying to run away from the memories. But in this documentary, they come together to heal with each other and find out more. It's really such a beautifully made and extremely important documentary.
Okay.
Please do go watch it.
I will go watch it.
In these schools, many children were made to change their names, or they had none at all.
They had to become white.
I only say this because I'm not sure if this is how it was everywhere, but at St. Joseph's and in another documentary that I watched called We Were Children, they were assigned a number, and that's who they were.
Wow. Well, they called them inmates, you said.
Yep.
They were basically just prisoners.
We Were Children, which I found on Tubi, I believe, is a more intimate portrayal of what several children went through from the moment they were taken from their families and the first day at a residential school and what happened after that. Now, not all times are children literally ripped out of parents' arms, but I told you they were forced still. So a parent might seem to be willingly letting their child go into the hands of these people, but they had no other choice.
Right.
So please watch that one as well. It's a recreation from their memories, or a, what do they call it, a dramatization.
Okay.
As you can imagine, it's beyond how any child should be treated, ever. And I'm so sick and tired of the whole saying, in the name of religion or whatever.
When I hear that, I just know that atrocities happened at this point.
In the sugarcane documentary, in one part, Charlene is up in the attic of a large barn that was on the property because it's still standing, explaining how the children used to be hung up on 3 poles and were whipped until they passed out.
Oh my God.
If they were caught talking in school or doing something they shouldn't during class, children were made to get on their knees and hold very heavy books above their heads for an hour. It didn't matter if you were 5 years old.
Yeah, that's torture.
Or if they refused to speak English, like in one, I think it was the We Were Children documentary, they were given 10 tokens. And if they didn't speak English over their native language, they would lose a token. And if they lost all their tokens, they would have to hold their tongue out for half an hour. And if their tongue accidentally slipped back inside, they would have to hold it for another half an hour.
Who thinks of this shit?
But this is like what I know of Catholic school. So it
True.
really adds up.
I'm like holding my tongue out now. I'm like, how annoying
Like
would
this.
that be? Oh, like hold it with their...
They had to hold it with their fingers and keep it out of their mouths.
Okay, that's weird. Who thinks of this stuff? Like only a very warped mind.
Yeah. There are stories about how some children would try to run away, but most of the time they're out in the middle of nowhere with no resources, no directions. They just wanted to go home. And when they couldn't find their way, they would end up dead, frozen, drowned.
Yeah, which might be better than what they would have been subjected to.
Yes, because there were a lot of teenage births.
Oh my God.
Many children were born at these schools. Remember, these are schools for children and teenagers. So how did they get pregnant?
All the priests.
Girls would have babies and try to hide them. If they were found, they would inspect each girl to find out which one, because it was a sin
that they were committing. The priests, not the children.
It was the priests and fathers that raped them. In fact, many adults today with parents who attended residential schools or had parents that were born in one do not know who their father or grandfather is.
And I bet they look a little more white.
Exactly.
Than native.
One man in this documentary, although he doesn't want to believe it, did a DNA test and it showed him as being half Irish. And it tied back to one particular family name, McGrath. Okay. And it just so happens that the school had its very own Father McGrath.
There you go.
His name is Rick Gilbert. He was the former chief of Williams Lake First Nation. And his story, I don't know what it is, but his story was particularly touching to watch unfold.
Okay.
It's heartbreaking. You can see his struggle. He's elderly and he's still searching for answers.
Because there are none. Like there's no reason for those horrible things to happen to you as a child.
And that's what it is. He actually owns a Catholic church with his wife.
Interesting.
But he struggles with his faith every day and is severely disturbed by the fact that his supposed father, not only of the church, but biologically, was a monster.
Yeah.
He knew what happened at these schools. He was assaulted. He even traveled to Rome to get guidance and say his piece. And the priest that he met with, whoever it was, he could only say that he was sorry and that things were handled differently back then. And
they're still handled that way today. Don't give me that bullshit. They've hidden it in the last 5 years.
This shit goes on. And men of faith and leadership positions get off the hook 24/7.
What's the one that just happened? You sent it to me through TikTok.
It was a pastor.
In Texas.
Yeah. It's always the pastor. It's always the priest. It's
because they're
ridiculous.
They're in the place of power where they have the access and the control over the children to be like vulnerable to them. It makes me so just grossed out at men in general, especially religious men.
It was hard to watch this particular part with Rick and this priest because Rick is emotional. He's very quiet. He's a very sweet man.
Yeah.
And he's telling this priest his story. And I felt no emotion from this priest whatsoever.
Yeah.
So at least not through the screen. Another surviving student, Larry Mill, when talking about the topic of babies in regard to St. Joseph's, said that he and another 4 kids witnessed the nuns throw a baby into the incinerator.
Oh my God.
And just in this documentary that I watched, it wasn't the first time mentioned. It was multiple times. And actually they found out that really it was a source of infanticide there.
Oh my God. The pro-life church.
Yep.
It's good to know. They hate abortion, but not killing babies that might be connected to the priest. I'm so angry.
Another man, now old, said that he was made to dig holes for one priest and to clean out the incinerator, and there were always bits of bone in it.
Oh my God.
This was unfortunately the end of many babies, it seems. But then also, a lot of them did make it out of these schools. But as far as we know, Ed Archie, Noise Cat, was the only one to survive St. Joseph's school incinerator.
Because he was born as a baby in a dumpster. Is that what you said?
He was dumped in a dumpster.
Okay. So his mom was trying to save him.
I think so. He was found by a groundskeeper, I believe.
Okay. He had to survive to tell the story.
Babies did survive elsewhere, so this wasn't always the case. Again, there were almost 550 of these schools.
Can you imagine how many babies were incinerated? Like nobody even knew they existed.
I know. Unless there's a story that was written down or recorded somewhere, we will never be able to uncover the whole truth. But for the infants that survived, that didn't mean their lives were easy. Many weren't wanted. Some were shunned because their skin was lighter than others. Because of the shame and guilt of the Catholic religion instilled within everyone, talking about how these babies came to be wasn't something you did.
Yeah.
So many of these children grew up without any sense of identity, who their real parents were, at least the father, sometimes the mother too.
Yeah.
They would end up in abusive households. Another man, Laird, talks about how he was given away and ended up with a family that had 11 children. And he had to listen to that father raping the kids every night.
Oh, my God.
And out of those 11 kids, 7 of them committed suicide.
Oh, my God. I'm guessing they were all foster.
I think.
And so that man was just getting new supply to abuse.
He talked about how when in residential school, you would have to do confession. But then later that night, that same priest you confessed to would drag you out of bed to assault you.
Oh, my, the evil.
And in one part of the We Were Children documentary, one of the women who was a child at the time, she was staying in the infirmary and she heard crying and she went to go check it out. And she came to a room of a bunch of boys crying and saw the priest literally on top of a naked boy. And they're just all crying in that room.
I can't with this. And this was in the early 1900s.
So what we're talking about right now are the federally funded residential schools, but these missions and everything went on for hundreds of years before this. So who knows how long this has truly been going on. But it honestly seems that every child was abused at these schools, physically and sexually. Girls and boys, the rape of children 5 and up. Just every single one of them had absolutely horrific stories.
These poor, poor children.
There were hundreds of thousands of children that went to these schools.
And no one was there to protect them.
No wonder why they kept it going for so long. These evil monsters had their own havens and breeding grounds for over a century.
Yes.
Longer, what I just said, longer.
And they went into their religion to do these things.
And they're still doing it today. It just never stops.
This kind of stuff makes me wish, once again, that there was a hell for them to go to.
And if anyone tried to stand up and get help for their physical or sexual abuse, they were ultimately ignored by the school,
of course,
authorities, and sadly their family in a lot of cases. Because what I kind of touched on, but really haven't mentioned, is that the families themselves, a lot of them, they were manipulated into believing that the schooling was good, or I don't know, it was something else, fear.
Because what are they going to do? They can't take their kid out of there.
No, but they become manipulated and maybe forget their own abuse, or maybe they didn't actually go to the school, so they were, manipulated by the church to believe that this is what needs to happen.
Right.
Because some of the children who did run away and make it home, their own family would call to have them be picked back up. And I'm not saying that's everybody, but it happened. It happened. Because again, this is generational trauma. This is multiple generations that went to these schools, 4 to 5 generations over 150 years. Imagine being the first generation to go and no one believing you about what happened.
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrible. It's terrible.
I feel like I have no words.
I know. It's always hard to have these discussions because they're really not. It's more information for you. And
we just sit here and shake our heads and feel sad.
But please go watch anything that you can. Even though this is hundreds of years in the making, this is brand new information to a lot of people. And finally, there are resources coming out with more information. So do your part and support the projects of the people who are trying to get the word out there.
Yes.
Now, not all staff at these schools approved of what was happening.
Yeah.
There was evidence of nuns speaking up, but the most that would happen is the priest or father would just be transferred to another school and told to repent.
Oh, yeah. We know how that works.
Or they would get rid of the nun
for causing problems. Because this stuff goes deep. It probably went all the way to the top at the time.
Oh, yeah. But there were good nuns that did what they could in a very harsh, strict environment, like sneaking the kids food that they weren't allowed to have. or standing up to the priest, like in person, to stop him for what he was doing.
Good. But that's a scary place to be too.
Very scary. And it took a very
brave woman
because not all of them were. In fact, they didn't want to hear it. And you might get beat for just saying something about it.
Like, can you imagine so many of these women, I would assume, went into being a nun because they believed in what the Bible says. And then you see these atrocities happening on a day-to-day basis.
How do you justify that?
How do you keep your faith?
How do you live?
That's what I'm saying.
Like if there would ever be a contemplation of suicide on my part, it would have to be in a moment like that where I was so ingrained in something and I knew it was my life and it was my calling, and then to be slapped in the face of the reality of what it was.
Yeah.
Like
it'd be a hopeless situation.
It would be. Now, like I said, there's some good ones, but there is evidence, like with the killing of infants, that many of the nuns were involved, even if it was turning the blind eye. And this includes child services of the state or county or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Getting rid of infants born from assault was a hush-hush. And it seemed like everybody was on board trying to cover it up. Like infanticide was common.
Because this is very similar to how they looked at Black citizens back in that time. They didn't see them as humans.
Right. These were savages.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a figure for this. If you were lucky to survive these schools, many commit suicide, whether it's right away in the school while they were there or at any age growing up, even into
adulthood. Like that's a lot of trauma to try and cope with and overcome. And I don't know if I was exposed to that at a young age, if I could have risen above it. Like it takes a very, very strong mind to do that.
But it is tenfold for them because of the shame and the guilt, because not only did they experience that, they're stuck between their culture and whatever was forced on them, but then they also have people in their own communities that they have to go back to who don't approve of them or don't believe them or they're not indigenous enough or blah, blah, blah. You know, like it's just a very hard way to live after that. It was cultural genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
The effects of abuse and cultural loss continue to impact subsequent generations. Like Julian, he never went, but it heavily impacted his life still today.
Yeah.
It has been proven that survivors and their descendants experience higher rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicide. It caused massive family disruption, severing family ties, and heavily compromising parenting skills. Many Indigenous languages are now at risk of extinction due to these schools because of the suppression of native tongues, and it has contributed to the persistent poverty and substance abuse in Native communities. Like I said, many are stuck between holding on to their Indigenous cultures and whatever backlash they're getting there,
right,
and being good Catholics if they still follow.
Which we know has a lot of shame and guilt built in.
And a lot of them do. I was surprised to watch in the documentary just how many are still followers.
Well, they took them from a very young age and beat it into them literally.
And then it was generation after generation.
Mm-hmm.
It was passed down.
Yeah.
All I know is we owe so much to our Indigenous communities, and the debt can never be repaid.
No.
Reconciliation can never be reached with what they have experienced for hundreds of years. Not to mention the atrocities of our countries killing and flooding their communities with disease.
Right. Like it just, the layers upon layers of abuse that they endured at the hand of the white people that showed up here.
We don't have an accurate number. We've kind of talked about this a time or two, but it's estimated to be anywhere from 100 to 500 million plus of Indigenous people that were murdered or who have died since we started colonizing North America.
So fucked up.
Let's put this into perspective. There are roughly 385 million people in America. And yet still today, as little a percentage that they represent of us in America, their right to exist is challenged still.
I know.
The resilience of our Indigenous communities to continue their cultures, to me, is beautiful.
Yes.
And it's necessary. And we need to support them in every effort.
Agreed.
In many ways, I feel that it is the last proof of our humanity here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
If we cannot respect our Indigenous communities and prop them up, then there's nothing left for us. I don't know what to say.
Agreed.
So residential schools is a lot.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about that because it is but one piece that adds to the reason why we have such a pressing issue with the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Okay.
Because it's everything that leads up to what makes this group vulnerable in the first place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm going to shift gears, and to end this episode, I'm going to bring awareness to 2 current cases that I've seen circulating. I guarantee that you haven't heard of either unless you have the same TikTok FYP as I do.
I do.
Sometimes.
We get a lot of the same. Yes, but not all.
Or you're local to these areas. One is in Canada and one is here.
Okay.
Please understand that what I tell you is the updated information I have, like literally at this point. Since writing this up, I have already had to add or change several things with new information coming to light.
Oh, wow.
The first is about 4 women in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Okay.
This includes Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and one Jane Doe, Aboriginal woman who was given the name Buffalo Woman.
Okay.
All were victims of serial killer Jeremy Skibicki. But it is the injustice of finding them that caused the additional uproar that it has. One of the women's bodies were only recently uncovered on Wednesday, February 26th of this year.
Oh, wow.
They were murdered nearly 2 years ago between March and May of 2022.
Okay.
So a little about these women. Morgan Beatrice Harris was born in 1982 or 1983. She was 39 years old. She had 5 children and 1 grandchild. She was a member of the Long Plain First Nation and lived in Winnipeg at the time. She was last seen in the area of Winnipeg's Main Street and Henry Avenue on May 1st. Mercedes Myron, born November 9th, 1995, was also a member of the Long Plain First Nation, living in Winnipeg. She was 26 years old, and she was a mother of 2. She was last seen in the North End neighborhood of Winnipeg mid-March. Rebecca Stacy Contois was born January 27th, 1998. She also lived in Winnipeg. She was 24 years old and a mother of 1.
Okay.
The Jane Doe that advocates and Indigenous elders named Buffalo Woman was thought to be in her mid-20s and living in Winnipeg at the time as well.
Okay.
On May 16th, 2022, residents of the Marjoy Apartments in North Kildonan, Winnipeg, were made aware of police officers searching the trash bins for human remains. Partial remains were found previously that prompted the cops to search all bins in that alleyway. That same day, Morgan Harris was reported missing.
Okay.
The partial remains that were found were identified as Rebecca Contois, and on May 18th, police arrested Jeremy Skibicki for her murder. At some point during the 20-hour interview, he admitted to killing 4 women.
Okay.
It was discovered that the rest of her remains had already been picked up, transported, and dumped at one of the city's landfills, Brady Road Landfill. With the remains they had, her time of death was determined to be 2 days before that on May 14th. On the 2nd of June, a search of the landfill was authorized to find the rest of Rebecca. On June 21st, they did find the rest of her remains. At the same time, and I'm not sure how they came to this conclusion, authorities believe that the other women were dumped at a different landfill, Prairie Green Landfill. But they did not search it.
They just didn't bother?
It wasn't until December that the public found out that he was suspected of killing not just 1 person, but 4.
Okay.
He was officially charged with 4 murders on December 1st, 2022. Authorities believe the bodies of Morgan and Mercedes were transported to the Prairie Green landfill the same day as Rebecca. And sadly for Buffalo Woman, who was believed to have been murdered in March, we still don't know where she is or who she is. It's just really sad. She's a forgotten person in all of this.
Yeah.
Because we only have his confession of murdering her.
Yeah, and he doesn't know her name or who she was. She wasn't anyone to him.
In December, this is the same time that the families find out that they knew where the women were dumped, but that they didn't search it.
I don't understand.
And now they're telling them, with the time that has passed, it's unfeasible to do so.
Well, yeah, now they're buried too deeply, probably. Why? They just didn't want to spend the money, or
they could have searched right away, but they didn't. But that doesn't mean that they are trash. So the fight to have the women found began.
Okay, good.
Before I go further with that, I need to tell you a little bit about this fucking Jeremy guy, because surprise, surprise, who he is.
A piece of shit.
But how they became his victims.
Okay.
Jeremy Anthony Michael Skibicki was born in 1986, 1987, so around my age. He was born in Winnipeg, but adopted adopted by a Polish family. Not sure the story there. As an adult, he had a history of abuse. Prior to the murders, he had 2 different partners that were both of Métis descent, so they were Indigenous.
He had a type.
And in case you don't know, Métis people are mixed race Indigenous people born of relations between First Nations women and European men starting in the 1600s.
Okay.
They are a recognized distinct group in Canada. Jeremy's biological mother was from Newfoundland and Labrador. He looks like your typical scary white supremacist asshole.
Fuck that guy.
We did decide that is going to be a hashtag for us.
Fuck that guy.
If we ever make March. Because it's been on our list for
2 years.
In June of 2015, he was convicted of abuse and served 2 months with 2 years probation following a conviction for strangling and punching his pregnant common law wife in the face repeatedly. She filed for a protection order, but it was initially dismissed. And I'm not sure what the final straw was for them to take it seriously and for him to be charged. But prior to that, he had also smothered her with a pillow so hard that her teeth began bleeding.
Oh my God.
And during their relationship, he was open about his violent fantasies and had raped her while she slept. In 2019, he had a new wife and she experienced much of the same: rape, being suffocated with a pillow, and violent abuse. He was arrested again when she filed for divorce after he disobeyed court orders, threatened her, and assaulted her with a deadly weapon. And all of this happened while he wasn't working. He hadn't worked since 2015 and was on disability for something. When he murdered Buffalo Woman in March of 2022, he admitted that he was coming down from mushrooms and that he was high on meth when he killed the other women.
Okay.
And it sucks how he chose them. First, for their race. And second, because they were homeless. He chose them from a homeless shelter. Investigations into him revealed that his Facebook account was full of misogynistic, violent, anti-Semitic, and white supremacist behavior.
Yeah, he's an incel.
He said he was a member of Holy Europe, also known as the Alliance of Patriotic Parallel Movements of European Folks, or APPMEF.
Yeah,
which
fuck
is
that organization.
It's a far-right group that believes that white Europeans need to preserve their bloodlines. During this interview, he said, "I don't believe that races are meant to be forced to live together. And this existence that I've had is just completely messed up because of liberalism."
Oh, God. Is he dead now, please?
No, but he is in jail.
Okay.
On August 28th, 2024, Skibicki was found guilty and subsequently sentenced to 4 terms of life imprisonment to be served concurrently, but he does have the possibility of parole.
No, that should not be allowed.
In 25 years. And he'll only be 60 years old then.
No. And he's a white supremacist and he's still alive. So he's probably spreading that hate and shit through letters or in prison. Like, ugh.
I don't know Canadian law. I don't know what the max was there, but that is not good enough.
It's not acceptable. If he had killed 4 white women, would it have been the same?
Exactly.
That's the question.
He raped, dismembered, discarded 4 women.
No parole.
None.
Ever.
I'll never understand. How does a life sentence turn into 25 years?
It's not
15
a life
years,
sentence.
10 years. Just stupid.
Hopefully he dies from something else.
I know. But while waiting for that sentence, the families and supporters were fighting for Morgan and Mercedes to be found. They were camping out for weeks on end, protesting, pressuring the government, everything they could do. This wouldn't have been an issue if they spent time searching for them right away.
Yeah.
But now they're fighting to convince authorities that their family members are worth the cost and undertaking. And before anyone listening thinks or says, well, it isn't reasonable after the fact, it's a landfill. Just don't. They spend millions to find white girls and women all the time.
Yes, they would.
This is a race issue. Simple. And sadly, it's also a political issue. Ahead of the 2023 Manitoba general election, the ruling Progressive Conservatives campaigned against searching the landfill for the remains of them.
What?
Democrats promised to search if elected, and thankfully, the Conservatives lost.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be until another Indigenous woman was discovered by workers at a landfill that the search truly began. This was Linda Mary Birdie. She was discovered on April 4th, 2023. She was a member of the Lake St. Martin First Nation and lived in Winnipeg. At first, they thought she might be another victim of Skibicki's, but it was determined that she was not.
No, there's another serial killer. Yay.
No, it's a sad reason. She was climbing into a dumpster, probably for food. And that's how her life ended. It all happened in one day in a few hours. Very tragic. the dumpster was taken away.
Okay.
But this sparked anger in the community to fucking get to it. Find my mom. Find my daughter. It was finally this year that at least one of them has been found.
Okay.
The search started in December of last year, and remains were found on February 26th, which I mentioned. It was the outcome needed, but it angered people further because it took less than 3 months for them to find remains, and officials had them believing that it was going to be impossible. They had to fight hard for 3 years, and in the end, after receiving $20 million in funding to perform this search, they just announced that they're very under budget because they found the remains so quickly.
Yeah.
Because after they were able to identify Morgan, they did find another set of remains.
Okay.
When I initially wrote this up, it wasn't known who they found.
Okay.
Like, that's why I was saying
it's still coming
information
in.
is moving. They did not know that that first set was Morgan Harris. And although they hope the second set of remains is Mercedes Myron, authorities warned the public that it's possible it's not, and it's very possible that they're going to have to let another family know that something terrible has happened. Everyone hopes not. They want closure for her family. So just keep an eye out for that. You have to keep up to date with it. Learn more about them. As I said, this is like kind of recent, but there's never enough information put out there for any of these stories.
Can you imagine, they found Morgan within 3 months. Like if they had just searched when they found the first girl who had gone missing, they would have found it in like a couple days.
All of them.
And it would have cost like probably an eighth of whatever they're going to spend now.
But
like,
at the
this
time,
makes no sense.
They didn't care.
They just didn't care. They didn't want to bother.
So keep those families in your prayers or whatever you need to do because they fought really, really hard to bring their family members home. And one has, but we're waiting on the other one.
Well, hopefully it comes out soon.
The next example I have is horrific as well. It is the murder and discovery of a 14-year-old.
Oh.
Her name was Emily Pike. Her remains were found on Valentine's Day of this year.
Oh.
Emily was a beautiful, sweet 14-year-old. I found out about this case again through TikTok. None of this is national news, and this one really irks you. She was just a baby, and somehow her story is not good enough to tell the country. Outside of social media, it's still only local news.
Wow.
Like what the actual fuck?
Yeah, racism.
Now, it is an ongoing investigation, so I'm going to give you everything I know up to this point today. I checked right before we started recording, but we could finish recording this and something new may have already come out. So please look into her and follow the story and investigation as it unfolds. And a little reminder that for the most part, we record this a week before audio is published. So I'm going to seem behind maybe.
Yeah.
Emily is a member of the San Carlos Apache tribe in Mesa, Arizona. To me, although she was 14, she definitely looked younger than that.
Okay.
She was tiny. She was staying at a group home at the time of her disappearance. I'm not positive of the name of that group home. Some people are saying it is Sylvia's group home, but I found others who have said that it is not. The details will be confirmed at some point. One comment I found pointed to an article about a city council meeting with a neighbor asking for help about how bad a group home was that had moved into the area, like on a street. Because I guess it's an actual house.
Okay.
But there is no mention of it being Sylvia's. So right now I can't confirm. I'm just saying this because this is all brand new. And when it's all brand new, people start just regurgitating information and throwing it out there, and just do your own research or wait for the right answer.
Yeah.
I would personally assume that officials don't want those details out there. The group home, the name of it.
Because they're still investigating.
And there's still children there. It doesn't need to become a target. Like, we still need to worry about the safety of those kids.
Right.
I'm not sure why she was there. She was not placed there by the Arizona Department of Child Safety. So I really don't know why she was at this group home. It's just information that's not available. I do know that she had a good relationship with her family, or at least most of her family, but she had a habit of running away and she struggled with her mental health. Her family lives on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. It could have been as simple as not wanting to be on the reservation. That's a common thing for a lot of people. They don't want to live there. Or you're a teenager and you want to get out. You want to go to the city. Being a teen can be hard. So who knows what the runaways are being contributed to. Or if they're referring back to her having run away from the group home a couple times. So again, we're getting information that is just said.
Not fully, accurate.
But yes, so I don't know the full story. But there is a video of her circulating of telling her mom that she misses her so much and that she can't wait until she can visit. Just really looking forward to seeing her. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Emily was an artist. She loved all things creative. She loved painting, drawing. She was looking forward to pursuing art in college. She was also interested in music. Her mother, Steph DeSella, said that she was just a very happy and kind person.
Okay.
She was last seen on January 27th, 2025 at approximately 7:45 p.m. near Mesa Drive and McKellips Road in Mesa, Arizona. She was wearing pink and a gray shirt at the time of her disappearance. She was on foot. Her roommate believes that she snuck out because there was a distraction at the group home that day. There was a church group there doing some kind of activity, and she thinks that she used that to sneak out.
Okay.
She wanted to go see a boy that she liked.
I mean, that's typical teenage behavior right there.
Supposedly, she met him while taking guitar lessons. No one yet knows who this boy is. Is it really a boy? Is it a man? Did she know him long? Was he involved? We don't know, but that was the last time she was seen. And this is what is fucked up. And what I do judge is the group home did not tell her mother that Emily was missing until an entire week later.
What?
An entire week.
Why?
On February 14th, a couple was driving down Highway 60 near Globe, Arizona, and noticed some bags off the side of the road with what happened to seem like some things strewn about. Either out of morbid curiosity or concern, they stopped and investigated. And as they approached the bags, staring back at them was a face.
Oh.
They immediately called police. She was found at mile marker 277 on Highway 60 off Forest Service Road, over 100 miles away from the group home.
Wow.
She was naked, dismembered, and put in large contractor bags. But not all of her was in the bags. Her head and torso were in one, and her legs were in another.
Okay.
Her arms and hands are still missing. A preliminary autopsy revealed that she suffered severe face and head trauma, and it is believed that her arms and hands were missing because they would reveal the perpetrator's identity.
Okay.
Which means that poor baby probably fought for her life.
Of course. I hope she did.
And even though she was found on the 14th, the Gila County Sheriff's Office didn't announce it until the 27th after she was identified and the family was told.
This would have been completely different if she was a white girl.
Exactly. And why were they not searching for her?
People would be horrified about this.
Where is she?
Yes.
They would be scouring the nation for her. She would be on every national news. Like,
yes.
What are those morning shows I don't watch anymore? She would
Today
be on
Show.
those. Yeah. The group home is under heavy scrutiny by the public. Police have reported that over the past 3 years, the group home reported 30 missing children and teenagers before Emily.
Oh, maybe it's someone that's in the group home doing something to these children.
The police believed them to all be runaways, which is very common for teens in group homes to run away.
True.
They don't want to be there.
Yeah.
However, this is a confusion online because if you go to search up Emily Pike, people are talking about her and fighting for justice and whatnot, but they are spewing some wrong information. It was not 30 missing children from this group home. It was 30 instances in which they called the police to talk about a missing person.
Okay.
It was actually 18 different people. 2 of them were adults. I think a few of them involved Emily. I don't have all the details, but there is a different story being put out there.
Okay.
And I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying that this group home isn't involved.
Or it could just be a hunting ground for a killer, like to take people from there. Like they entice them to come get guitar lessons or whatever.
We just talked about with the schools. It would not surprise me.
No, nothing surprises me anymore. I don't put it past anyone to be evil.
And I don't put it past today with these situations. I'm not confident that when it comes to determining whether a child should stay with their family or not, that race isn't the main factor.
No.
And the reason why these missing cases are important, even if a group home is not involved, runaways are more vulnerable to human and sex trafficking.
Yes.
So why are we not taking this seriously? Why is finding them not a number one top priority? It's not. They're just like, oh, they're a runaway. And I'm like, yes, but the runaways often end up in these situations. So why are you not immediately searching for them?
Because the dark truth is that there is so many powerful people involved in the sex trafficking community that it won't come to light, and it runs deep with all the authorities, everything, right?
Yeah.
And until it's a little white girl that everyone knows that goes missing, they think it can just be swept under the rug.
Well, now they're fucking up. The only thing I can see about this group home right now, I don't know who it is. I don't know what it is. If it is along the lines of the one that has been talked about and it being kind of a house, yeah, I'm worried. Because I feel like they targeted vulnerable Indigenous girls.
I believe it.
And they didn't tell the mom for a week?
Yeah, that
Come on,
to
that's
me
sketchy.
Seems something's up.
Her roommate does think that Emily maybe just tried to hitchhike to get home.
And just got picked up by the wrong person.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of people out there that will take that opportunity.
I know. And the police are looking into this group home. They've done an inquiry on their license or something, but they don't believe it's why she's gone.
Okay.
If they did, they would need to remove those other children immediately.
Yes,
but they're
in
not.
danger.
There are no suspects. They are receiving tons of leads, which they said they are following through with, and there are some interests, but no suspects.
Okay.
And they'll release it as they go.
I mean, it did kind of just happen, so they just found her body at least.
Well, now it's been almost a month while we're recording this.
True.
That they found her body. They're trying, and I did watch a couple police interviews where I believe that they're not letting this one go, and it's because of the uproar.
Yeah, the scrutiny
it
on
has
them
caused.
Mm-hmm.
Emily's case has gone viral on TikTok and Facebook thanks to so many creators,
yes,
native and not, bringing awareness to her case and pushing for justice. Because when she was found, this kind of came out the same time that the Gabby Petito documentary or something came out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that just came out.
And I haven't watched it, but it just further highlights that, again, not only millions spent to find her, millions talking about her, just the international attention that her case got. And here is this little girl who is dismembered and it can't get past the local Arizona news right there.
Yeah.
And they're seeing this, and now she has a Netflix special and all of this happening. And they're like, why do you not fucking care about us?
Exactly. And when Gabby went missing, there were like, I think 3 or 4 other girls that had gone missing around the same time as Gabby that got no play.
Oh,
I remember when that happened. There were several other missing people in that same area in Utah where she went missing.
Oh, I see.
That got no. And one was a black male, if I remember right. And then the others were Indigenous women.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And
exactly.
They're like, why is Gabby getting all of the resources? And these other 4 people are just like, oh, well, whatever.
It's the same everywhere, it seems. But the community has really come together for her.
Good.
And others. You know, they're still screaming for the others who have met the same fate. Even young girls who were also dismembered in other states. And
it's probably a serial killer.
I know. But because of this push on social media, the FBI did get involved.
Okay.
Just recently. So I believe that her case will make national news. There is now just too many people screaming about this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it better. If it doesn't, then I do not know what to say.
It's just clear sign of what we've already talked about.
Because it's a fight. They have vigils, walks, protests. Artists are creating these beautiful murals for her. There is one that makes me really mad. It was put up, I believe it was Oakland, California, but it was painted over within a week.
What?
That's fucked up. One thing that they are doing that I think is really neat is advocates are pushing for an alert system similar to the Amber Alert.
Okay.
A bill was submitted to expand the current alert system to include all missing Indigenous people.
Well, of course. Yeah.
But this would prompt an immediate search.
Yes.
Any Indigenous person.
This should have been an Amber Alert. She was 14.
Exactly. She is a child. But it needs to expand beyond her too, because again, they are 10 times
more likely to
become a victim of violence and murder. It needs to be taken more seriously.
Yes.
So I hope that's put in place. But again, with the way our country is, I don't know. But I pray they find out who did this. I have a feeling, especially in the way she was dismembered and dumped, that we're probably dealing with a serial killer.
Yes.
Someone who's done this before. And if that's the case, then hopefully there are some other unsolved cases that will
they can connect the dots.
But then again, I have given you many stories in which dismemberment was the first way that they chose to get rid of a body, their first murder. All starts somewhere, but I do know that if they could catch this person, they stop it, because most people who can dismember kill again.
Yes, especially if they think they got away with it.
I hope the coverage of this case only increases and they don't stop until he's found. Or they. We don't know anything.
No.
Justice for Emily Pike and all Indigenous children, women and men.
Yes.
Like I said before, the last bit of our humanity is how we handle this crisis.
Mm-hmm.
No more stolen sisters. Justice for every family affected by the residential schools.
Oh my God.
I can never make up for anything that has happened, but I can be a voice, and I stand with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. I may have only the smallest amount of Blackfoot in my blood, but I love you and pray for justice every day.
Absolutely. They deserve it. This was a really heavy episode for me, like just hearing this and learning about this horrific history again that was suppressed forever, and they would like to keep it suppressed probably. You know, as much as it's demonized, there's a lot of good things that come out of social media because it gives a platform for these underrepresented communities to bring this kind of information to light and hopefully get the support from those who have louder voices that can help them get what they need and stop this violence from happening. And the way to stop that from happening is to care and to give it the same amount of resources that we do the white girls that go missing, so that these serial killers won't continue to prey upon them, because they choose this community because they know, just like they choose sex workers and other minorities, because they know that they'll be less visualized and they can get away with it for longer. And that's how we stop the violence. But I don't have a lot of faith in the current administration doing that.
No.
But I did look it up while you were talking about Emily, and just to see, like, when I did a Google search, it looks like it is only Arizona papers covering it right now.
Yep. Which is outrageous.
Yes.
Absolutely outrageous.
Because I know when the little girl in Colorado went missing when she was just walking home from school, which we'll probably cover her at some point, Jessica Ridgway, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
National news immediately. And here you have a 14-year-old girl who went missing.
And for 3 weeks.
And was found dismembered.
Yes.
And there's nothing.
Nothing.
That's wild.
She was a kid.
Yes.
She was a kid.
That poor family. Well, thank you for putting the time into this hard topic and watching the documentaries and just having to face that darkness, and for bringing it to light for our listeners that I'm sure many of you have not heard these stories either. So the more visibility, the better. And we'll always use our platform to try and represent these voices that are suppressed and pushed down to be silenced.
And we really do try.
Yes.
I really do try. Like we said in the beginning, it's hard for us because we don't want to say things wrong or offend anyone in the way that we're talking about it, because we are not as educated about something, but we still want to talk about it. So it's close to my heart because I grew up in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Like I grew up with
Indigenous.
Everybody, you know, I never saw a difference between us.
Because there's not. It's just
exactly
what color our skin is.
And so as I grew up, and then just being in recent times and truly seeing like this hate for other people, just for no reason.
For no reason. You don't know these people at all. You're just making stereotypes.
And that's all it is. I don't know what to say. Thank you for letting me bring this to you.
Thank you.
It needed to be said. I was worried about me being late on the stories that I was covering.
And you can bring updates if more come. We'll mention them in one of our future episodes.
But the residential schools,
that's
needed to be talked about.
So messed up.
Yep.
There's no words. I have to watch those documentaries.
Anyway, that's all. Thank you for listening. Please send any topics or stories to lucidlabpodcast@gmail.com.
And come back next week for another new episode. I'm putting it together right now, and it will be a true crime.
And if you enjoy our podcast, please rate, subscribe, and share wherever you can.
Yes, please. And tell your friends about it if they like true crime and all that too. And in the meantime,
stay lucid.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me. hey.